I assure you that this will have nothing to do with the coronavirus epidemic. This is about the poetry of Alexander Pope. People have more time on their hands. But why is it on their hands? I don't know. But it is, and so, almost miraculously, they are reading now, or so I am told. This is because it's the year 0 CE, in the time of the coronavirus epidemic, a very strange time. So the question becomes, what are you reading? It's not easy to find a book. The library is closed, so that's not an option. I have some books acquired when I was much younger. I haven't bought a book in years. I looked over my little collection and selected the poetical works of Alexander Pope. Yeah, I know, everyone's first choice. I can't imagine that many other folks are reading Pope now, even in this extreme circumstance. I read his Essay on Criticism, Eloisa de Abelard, The Rape of the Lock, his Essay on Man, and the Dunciad. This proved altogether to be quite a chunk of reading, and took some time, but then, you may recall, it was time that I had on my hands. Mr. Pope chose to write in verse, employing a form known as the heroic couplet, 2 lines that rhyme, followed by 2 lines that rhyme, and so on, a pattern that I came to call 18th century rap. Here is a rather famous example. True wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. I'll repeat it. True wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. That's from the Essay on Criticism, written when the author was 20 years old. Pope was a Catholic, a distinct drawback in England. He could not live in London or attend university. Like Shakespeare, he was largely self-taught, and it is a complete marvel, his learning. So wide, so deep. He must have been an extremely bookish man. He was physically deformed, 4 feet 6 inches tall, with a twisted spine. His writing was balanced and graceful, like this. True ease in writing comes from art, not chance. Those who move easiest, who have learned to dance. In all his work, the poetry of this learned man, I think he wrote and spoke in 5 or 6 languages. There were hundreds of allusions, references to people and things I did not comprehend, but I felt I got the gist of everything I read. Pope should have called his Essay on Criticism his Essay Against Criticism. He was not a fan of critics or of criticism as a practice. That is clear from the opening lines and continues really without let-up to the end. He has an axe to grind and the sparks fly. His theme is narrow and he harps on it rather vehemently. He must have been badly burned by a critic or two. Rather than trust the opinion of a critic, Pope turns to nature, God's expression, and reason to instruct and to form a work of art. In a preface to his essay on man, Pope says he could have written it in prose, but chose to use poetry for two reasons. One is that rhymes might strike a reader more forcibly at first and help him to remember them later. And second, poetry allows the author to be more concise, always a virtue. Writing in his heroic couplets, Pope is probably best remembered for his mock-heroic verses. In The Rape of the Lock, he gives a maiden's curl the epic treatment. Though the action, this theft of a curl, is trivial in itself, it is possible to make it appear of the utmost importance. And it is true that the lock that was lost, snipped away by one who was no gentleman, will be what is most recalled about the lady, especially as it has been enshrined in Pope's poem. The other great mock-heroic work is the Dunciad. Mock-heroic work inspired Pope. It agreed with him. It was his harmony and his muse, his understanding of human nature, making enormities out of trifles. In it are linked dullness, ambition, vanity, and pride. Dullness, stupidity, foolishness, that is the foundation. Ambition is the engine that drives. Vanity is the blindness that believes in success. And pride is the satisfaction felt in the great achievement. In the poem, the queen of dullness reigns supreme, and her stooges do her bidding. It is a romp through foolishness. Unfortunately, it is an extended romp, something of an extreme in foolishness itself. Pope would reply to that, I'm sure, by saying that when it comes to dullness, the subject itself is vast and deep. The poem is a work of overkill, by its nature given over to excess. In it, Pope decided to get even, and more, much more, with his critics and detractors, and anyone who ever looked or thought askance about him. Pope's poetry is a magnifying lens. Using it, he can examine minutiae and present them life-size or larger. He can make mountains out of molehills. His compatriot, Jonathan Swift, played similar tricks of distorting perspective in his satires. The best way to skewer an opponent is to belittle him. That, or raise him to heights of absurd and comical genius.